Happy Friday and welcome to episode 22 of Kivli Kids Cozy Corner. I'm going to try to end on a chapter today, but who knows if we will. Let's do our pledge, do our motto, and get started with Matilda some more. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's come on over here. And begin. We are students at Peter J. Shields. We believe in kindness. We are responsible. We are persistent. We are respectful. We are bucket fillers. Whoops, sorry, the jiggle of the camera. We drop acts of kindness into everything we do. We are Peter J. Shields. Went to grab the camera a little too soon and bumped it. Oh well. Happy Friday. Let's get started with, see where Matilda, what else does she know besides her 2 times table? That's pretty impressive. Think of that as a kindergartner, which again, most people aren't that way. But remember I said that this book is probably the last reading. You see the pages are just like all these are totally broken away from the binding. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. So, Miss Honey last asked her if she knows any other multiplication tables. That's where we left off. So let's see where we are. She says, oh, I think I do, Miss Honey. I think so. Well, which ones, Matilda? How far have you got? Well, I don't know. I don't quite know, Matilda said. I don't know what you mean. What I mean is, for instance, do you know your 3 times table? Oh, yes, Miss Honey. And the 4 times table? Oh, yes, Miss Honey. Well, how many do you know, Matilda? Do you know all of them up to your 12 times table? Yes, Miss Honey. Well, then what are 12 sevens? 84, Matilda said. Miss Honey paused and leaned back in her chair. Behind the plain table that stood in the middle of the floor in front of her class, she was considerably shaken by the exchange, but she took care not to show for it. She had never come across a 5-year-old before, or indeed a 10-year-old, who could multiply with such facility. I hope the rest of you are listening to this, she said to the class. Matilda is a very lucky girl. She has wonderful parents who have already taught her to multiply lots of numbers. Was it your mother, Matilda, who taught you? No, Miss Honey, it wasn't. You must have a great father then. He must be a brilliant teacher. No, Miss Honey, Matilda said. My father did not teach me. You mean you taught yourself? I don't quite know, Matilda said truthfully. It's just that I don't find it hard or very difficult to multiply one number by another. Miss Honey took a deep breath and let it out. Slowly. Whew. She took again another look at the small girl with bright eyes standing beside her desk, so sensible and solemn. You say you don't find it difficult to multiply one number by another? Miss Honey said. Could you try to explain that a little bit? Oh dear, Matilda said. I'm not really sure. Miss Honey waited. The class was silent, all listening. Well, for instance, Miss Honey said, if I asked you to multiply 14 by 19? Oh no, that's too difficult. It's 266, Miss Matilda said softly. Miss Honey stared at her. Then she picked up a pencil and quickly worked out the sum on a piece of paper. What did you say it was? 266, Matilda said. Miss Honey put down her pencil and removed her spectacles and began to polish the lenses with a piece of tissue. The class remained quiet, watching her and waiting for what was coming next from Matilda who was standing by her desk. Well, now tell me, Matilda, Miss Honey said, still polishing. Try to tell me exactly what goes on inside your head when you get a multiplication like that. You obviously have to work it out in some way. You seem to be able to arrive at the answer almost instantly. Take the one you've just done, 14 multiplied by 19. Well, I simply put the 14 down in my head and I multiply by 19, Matilda said. I'm afraid I don't know how else to explain it. I've always said that I have a little pocket calculator. I've always said to myself that if a little pocket calculator can do it, why can't I? I'm sorry, this week has been a bad reading week for Miss Kivli. I don't know what's going on. Oh, why not indeed, Miss Honey said. The human brain is an amazing thing. I think it's a lot better than a lump of metal, Matilda said. That's all a calculator is. Right you are, Miss Honey said. Pocket calculators are not allowed in this school anyway. Miss Honey was feeling quite quivery. There was no doubt in her mind that she had met a truly extraordinary mathematical brain, and words like child genius and prodigy went flitting through her head. She knew that these sorts of wonders do pop up in the world from time to time, but only once or twice in 100 years. After all, Mozart was only 5 when he started composing for the piano, and look what happened to him. If you don't know who Mozart is, do some research. You got time. It's spelling M-O-Z-A-R-T, by the way. It's not fair, Lavender said. How can she do it and we can't? Oh, don't worry, Lavender, you'll catch up, Miss Honey said, lying through her teeth. At this point, Miss Honey could not resist the temptation of exploring still a little further the mind of the astonishing child. She knew she ought to be paying some attention to the rest of her class, but she was altogether too excited to let the matter rest. Well, she said, pretending to address the whole class, let's leave sums for the moment and see if any of you have begun to learn to spell. Hands up if anyone can spell cat. 3 hands went up. They belonged to Lavender, a small boy called Nigel, and Matilda. Spell cat, Nigel. Nigel spelled it, C-A-T. Miss Honey now decided to ask questions that normally she would not have dreamed of asking the class on the first day of school. I wonder, she said, whether any of you know how to spell cat have also learned how to read a whole group of words when they are strung together into a sentence. I have, Nigel said. So have I, said Lavender. Miss Honey went to the blackboard and wrote with her chalk the sentence, I have already begun to learn to read long sentences. She had purposely made it difficult, and she knew that there were precious few 5-year-olds around who would be able to manage it. Can you tell me what that says, Nigel? She asked. Oh, that's too hard, Nigel said. Lavender, the first word is I. Can any of you read the whole sentence, Miss Honey asked, waiting for the yes that she felt certain was to come from Matilda. Yes, Matilda said. Well, go ahead, Miss Honey said. Matilda read the sentence without any hesitation at all. That is really very good indeed, Miss Honey said, making an understatement of her life. How much can you read, Matilda? Well, I think I can read most things, Miss Honey, Matilda said, although I'm afraid I can't always understand the meanings. Miss Honey got to her feet and walked smartly out of the room, but was back in 30 seconds carrying a thick book. She opened it at random and placed it on Matilda's desk. This is a book of humorous poetry, she said. See if you can read that one aloud. Smoothly and without pause, and at a nice speed, Matilda began to read. An epicure dining at the Crew found a rather large mouse in its stew. Cried the waiter, don't shout, and wave it about, or the rest will be wanting one too. Several children saw the funny side of the rhyme and laughed. Miss Honey said, do you know what an epicure is, Matilda? Is it someone who is dainty with his eating? Matilda said. That is correct, Miss Honey said. And do you happen to know what particular type of poetry this is called? It's called a limerick, said Matilda. It's a lovely one. It's so funny. It's a famous one, Miss Honey said, picking up the book and returning it to the table in front of the class. A witty limerick is very hard to write, she added. They look so easy, but they most certainly are not. I know, Matilda said. I've tried quite a few times, but I'm never any good. You have you? Miss Honey said, more sorrowed than ever. Well, Matilda, I would very much like to hear one of those limericks you say you've written. Could you try to remember one for us? Well, Matilda said, hesitating, I've actually been trying to make one up about you, Miss Honey, while I've been sitting here. About me? Miss Honey cried. Well, we've certainly got to hear that one, haven't we? I don't think I want to say it, Miss Honey. Oh, please tell it, Miss Honey said. I promise I won't mind. I think you will, Miss Honey, because I have to use your first name to make it rhyme, and that's what I don't want to say. How do you know my first name? Miss Honey asked. I heard another teacher calling it to you just before we came in, Matilda said. She called you Jenny. I insist upon hearing this limerick, Miss Honey said, smiling, one of her rare smiles. Stand up and recite it, please. Reluctantly, Matilda stood up, and very slowly, very nervously, she recited the limerick. The thing we all ask about Jenny is surely there cannot be many young girls in this place with so lovely a face. The answer is not any. The whole of Miss Honey's pale and pleasant face blushed a brilliant scarlet. Then once again she smiled. It was a much broader one this time, a smile of pure pleasure. Why, thank you, Matilda, she said, still smiling. Although it's not true, it is a really good limerick. Oh dear, I must try to remember that one. From the third row of the desk, Lavender said, "It's good. I like it." "It's all true as well," a small boy called Rupert said. "Of course it's true," Nigel said. Already the whole class had begun to warm to Miss Honey, although as yet she had hardly taken any notice to any of them except Matilda. "Who taught you to read, Matilda?" Miss Honey asked. "I just sort of taught myself, Miss Honey." "And have you read any books all by yourself? Any children's books, I mean?" "Well, I've read all the ones that are in the public library on High Street, Miss Honey." "And did you like them?" "I liked some of them very much indeed," Matilda said, "but I thought others were fairly dull." "Tell me the ones you liked." "I liked The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe," Matilda said. "I think Mr. C.S. Lewis is a very good writer, but he has one failing. There are no funny bits in his books." And I do like his books, too. If you haven't read any of that, that's a good one, too. "You are right there," Miss Honey said. "There aren't many funny books in Mr. Tolkien either," said Matilda. "Do you think all children's books ought to have funny bits in them?" Miss Honey asked. "I do," Matilda said. "Children are not as serious as grown-ups. They love to laugh." Miss Honey was astonished by the wisdom of this tiny girl. She said, "And what are you going to do now that you've read all the children's books?" "Oh, I'm reading other books," Matilda said. "I borrow them from the library. Mrs. Phelps is very kind to me. She helps me choose them." Miss Honey was leaning far forward over her work table and gazing at the wonder child. She had completely forgotten about the rest of the class. "What are the books?" she murmured. "Oh, I'm very fond of Charles Dickens," Matilda said. "He makes me laugh a lot, especially Mr. Pickwick." And at that moment, the bell in the corridor sounded, and it was the end of class. Ooh, the Trunchbull. We're not going to finish this chapter, but I'm going to start it because it's Cliffhanger Friday. Anyway, here we go. The Trunchbull. In the interval, Miss Honey left the classroom and headed straight toward the headmistress's study. She felt wildly excited. She had just met a small girl who possessed, or so it seemed to be, quite extraordinary qualities of brilliance. There had not been time yet to find out exactly how brilliant this child was, but Miss Honey had learned enough to realize that something had to be done soon as possible. It would be ridiculous to leave a child like that stuck in the bottom form. Normally, Miss Honey was terrified of the headmistress and kept well away from her, but at this moment she felt ready to take on anybody. She knocked on the door of the dreaded private study. "Enter!" boomed the deep and dangerous voice of Miss Trunchbull. Miss Honey went in. Now, most headmistresses are chosen because they possess a number of fine qualities. They understand children, they have the children's best interests at heart, they are sympathetic, they are fair, and they are deeply interested in education. Miss Trunchbull possessed none of these qualities. So think of her as your principal at your school. So for us, it's Peter J. Shields and Mr. Bosky. He's so not like Miss Trunchbull. So the Trunchbull possessed none of these qualities, and how she ever got her present job was a mystery. She was, above all, the most formidable female. She had once been a famous athlete. Even now, her muscles were still clearly in evidence. You could see them in the bull neck, in her big shoulders, in her thick arms, in the sinewy wrists, in the powerful legs. Looking at her, you got the feeling that this was someone who could bend iron bars and tear telephone directories in half. Her face, I'm afraid, was neither a thing of beauty nor joy. Oh, dear. She had an obstinate chin, a cruel mouth, and small, arrogant eyes. And as for her clothes, they were, to say the least, extremely odd. She always had a brown cotton smock which pinched in around the waist and a wide leather belt. The belt was fastened in front with an enormous silver buckle. The massive thighs which emerged from out of the smock were encased in a pair of extraordinary breeches, bottle green in color and made of coarse twill. These breeches reached just below the knees and formed there on down where she sported green stockings with turn-up tops, which displayed her calf muscles to perfection. On her feet she wore flat-heeled brown brogues with leather flaps. She looked, in short, more like a rather eccentric, bloodthirsty follower of the staghounds than the headmistress of a nice school for children. When Miss Honey entered the study, Miss Trunchbull was standing beside her huge desk with a look of scowling impatience on her face. "Yes, Miss Honey," she said. "What is it you want? You're looking flushed and flustered this morning. What is the matter with you? Have those little stinkers been flicking spitballs at you?" "Oh, no, Miss Headmistress, nothing like that." "Well, what is it? Get on with it. I'm a busy woman." And as she spoke, she reached out and poured herself a glass of water from the jug that was always on her desk. And that is where we're going to end today. Cliffhanger Friday. Yee! On Monday, we'll continue with Matilda. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Again, thanks for checking into Kibble Kids Cozy Corner. And please, please, please don't forget that we love you, we care about you, and do your best to stay connected with people. Bye.